Train your mind. Like Marcus Aurelius, unleash Stoic self-discipline. We live in a world of endless distraction and emotional chaos. So, what if you could build the same unbreakable mental strength as one of history's most powerful men? What if you could face turmoil not with anxiety but with a quiet, unshakable calm? This isn't some fantasy. It's a skill you can train, a science of the mind perfected 2,000 years ago. Picture this. You're Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome. For 15 years, you're fighting brutal wars on the edge of your empire. A devastating plague, the Antonine Plague, is tearing through your cities, killing millions. Then, your most trusted general, Avidius Cassius, stabs you in the back and declares he's the emperor now. On top of all that, you've lost most of your children. Out of 13, only 5 will outlive you. Yet somehow, Marcus handled all of it with a legendary calm and sense of duty. He wasn't a superhero. He was a student of a powerful ancient philosophy called Stoicism. The private journal he kept, which we now call Meditations, was never meant for our eyes. It was his personal training ground, his mental gym, packed with exercises and reminders for mastering his own mind. These writings are a blueprint for forging elite self-discipline. Today, we're going to unlock his secrets. We'll explore 10 core principles from the philosopher king that will teach you how to train your mind, conquer your own internal chaos, and build the discipline to thrive in the modern world. If you're ready to start this journey, consider subscribing and join a community that's all about these timeless ideas. Principle 1. Understand the dichotomy of control. First up, the absolute bedrock of all Stoicism, the dichotomy of control. It's a simple but game-changing idea. You have to get crystal clear about what's in your power and what's not. The Stoics argued that most of our stress, anger, and sadness comes from one simple mistake. We pour our energy into trying to control things that we can't and never will control. The philosopher Epictetus, who was a huge influence on Marcus Aurelius, put it bluntly. Some things are in our control and others not. In our control, our opinions, our choices, our desires, our actions. Not in our control, well, pretty much everything else. Our bodies, other people, our reputation, world events. Marcus lived this. It's all over his meditations. He constantly reminds himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This isn't about giving up. It's a pragmatic strategy for protecting your most valuable resource, your focus. Think about it. We get furious in a traffic jam we can't change. We get anxious about what a coworker thinks of us, an opinion we can't control. We get enraged by politics on the other side of the globe, outcomes we can't control. We're just burning energy, leaving our inner world undefended and chaotic. Stoic discipline starts by flipping that focus inward. You can't control the traffic, but you can control your reaction. You can listen to a podcast, practice breathing, or just accept the delay without rage. You can't control your coworker's opinion, but you can control your own integrity. You can't change the world with a single thought, but you can control how you engage with the news, choosing informed action over helpless outrage. This isn't easy. It's a moment-to-moment job. Every time you feel that spike of anger or anxiety, just pause. Ask yourself that critical question. Is this thing upsetting me inside my control or outside? If it's outside, your job is to practice acceptance. If it's inside, your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, that's where the work is. This simple filter is the key to taking back your peace of mind. It's the art of knowing where to fight and where to just let go. Principle 2. Build your morning fortress. How you start your day sets the stage for everything else. For Marcus Aurelius, the morning wasn't for groggily scrolling through his feed. It was for building a mental fortress. His morning routine, which we can piece together from Meditations, was a masterclass in psychological prep. First, he fought the battle we all fight, the one against the warm, cozy bed. He met that temptation with a call to duty, writing to himself, I am rising to the work of a human being. Why then am I dissatisfied if I am going to do the things for which I exist? He saw the day not as a chore, but as a chance to be who he was meant to be. Second, he started with gratitude. He'd tell himself, when you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. This instantly frames your existence as a gift, not something to be wasted on negativity. Third, and this is the really clever part, he practiced something called negative visualization. He'd prepare for the day by thinking about the difficult people he was probably going to meet. He wrote, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. This wasn't him being a cynic. This was strategy. By expecting this behavior, he wasn't shocked or offended when it happened. He'd already rehearsed how he would respond, not with more anger but with patience, because he understood their flaws came from a place of ignorance. In our world, this kind of morning ritual is more important than ever. We wake up and are immediately hit with everyone else's agenda, emails, notifications, breaking news. We start the day in a defensive crouch. To use this lesson, you have to take back your morning. Before the world grabs you, take a few minutes. Affirm your own purpose. It doesn't have to be rule the Roman Empire. It can be, I'm rising to be a good parent, or a focused student. Then, practice gratitude. Think of one thing you're thankful for. Finally, do a mental pregame. Think about the stressful meeting or the difficult conversation ahead. Don't stew in anxiety, but rehearse your ideal response. How will you stay calm? How will you act with integrity? By doing this, you stop reacting to your day and start leading it. You build the fortress before the siege begins. Section 3, Principle 3. Practice. Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. All right? Principle number 3 is where things get a little weird, but stick with me. It's one of the most powerful tools in the Stoic toolkit, Premeditatio Malorum, which basically means the premeditation of evils. Our culture is obsessed with positive thinking. Just visualize success. Don't even think a negative thought. The Stoics would say that's a fragile way to live, a way that leaves you shattered when things inevitably go wrong. Premeditatio. Malorum isn't pessimism, it's resilience training. It's the act of calmly and deliberately thinking about what could go wrong. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said it best. Fortune falls heavily on those for whom she's unexpected. By mentally rehearsing misfortune, you strip away its power to shock and overwhelm you. Marcus did this all the time. He thought about losing his reputation, losing a battle, getting sick, even his own death. He'd advise himself to think about everything he cherished, his health, his family, his job, and imagine it was gone. This has two incredible benefits. First, it prepares you and lowers your anxiety. Think of it like a fire drill. You practice when there's no fire, so you don't panic when there is. If you've already walked through the steps of what you'd do if you lost your job, you're in a much better position to handle it if it actually happens. You've turned panic into a problem-solving exercise. The second benefit is a massive boost in gratitude. When you regularly think about losing what you have, you stop taking it for granted. We all get used to the good things in our lives, our partner, our health, our home. They just become background noise. By visualizing their absence, you're reminded of how precious they are. It's a powerful cure for our endless desire for more, teaching us to want what we already have. To try this, just set aside a few minutes. Before a big presentation, don't just visualize it going perfectly. Imagine the projector fails. Imagine a tough question. Imagine your mind going blank. Then, calmly, plan your response. What's your backup? Or think bigger. Take a moment and think about someone you love. Imagine, just for a second, that they're not in your life. Feel that pang. Then open your eyes and appreciate that they are. This isn't about being morbid. It's about using the thought of darkness to truly appreciate the light. It's an insurance policy for your mind. Section 4. Principle 4. Master your inner citadel through journaling. The book we call Meditations was never supposed to be a book. Its real title was To Himself. It was Marcus Aurelius's private journal, a working lab for his mind. And that reveals our fourth principle, the practice of philosophical journaling. This isn't a Dear Diary where you just list what happened. It's a workshop for building character. For Marcus, the journal was where he could conduct a daily audit of himself. He could be brutally honest, look at his flaws, correct his own bad judgments, and drill his principles until they were second nature. He wasn't just writing about stoicism, he was doing it. One of the coolest ways he used it was for a kind of self-criticism. Whenever he felt like judging someone, he'd ask himself this question: what fault of mine most resembles the one I am about to criticize? That question just dissolves arrogance and builds empathy. It turns your irritation with someone else into a chance for your own self-improvement. He also used the journal to reframe things. When faced with a problem, he'd write about it, breaking it down into objective facts, stripping away emotional words like terrible or disaster. He'd remind himself that everything is temporary and that the problem wasn't out there, but in his perception of it. The journal was his tool for pulling the problem out of his head and looking at it rationally. To train your mind like Marcus, you've got to get a notebook. Call it To Myself. Every evening, do a review. Seneca, another Stoic legend, suggested asking these questions. What bad habit did you cure today? What vice did you stand up to? In what way are you better? Don't just recount your day. Analyze it. Where did you lose your cool? Why? What was the faulty judgment that caused it? Write it down. Be unflinchingly honest. No one else is ever going to read it. Then, write down how you'll do better. If you were impatient, write a reminder about patience. If you were distracted, recommit to focus. Quote the Stoics. Write their words out by hand. Argue with them. Make their wisdom your own. This practice is the ultimate form of self-discipline because you're holding yourself accountable. It's the training ground where the theory of philosophy gets hammered into the steel of your character. Section 5. Principle 5. Live with prosauche, ethical mindfulness. Our fifth principle introduces a vital Stoic idea you've probably never heard of: prosauche. This ancient Greek word is often translated as mindfulness, but it's way deeper than the modern version. Prosauche isn't about sitting on a cushion and observing your breath. It's a continuous, vigilant, ethical mindfulness, aimed at your own thoughts and actions right here in the present moment. It's the opposite of living on autopilot. Let's be real, modern life is basically a conspiracy against prosauche. We're pushed to multitask, scroll endlessly, and react instantly. We float through our days in a distracted haze, often with no idea why we're even doing what we're doing. The Stoics saw this as the root of unhappiness. Prosauche is the cure. It's about bringing a sober, ethical awareness to every moment. When you're at work, are you actually working with focus and integrity? When you're with your family, are you really there listening and present? Marcus talked about this when he advised himself to do whatever was in front of him with precise and genuine seriousness. That seriousness isn't about being grim, it's about respecting the present moment, recognizing that this action, right here, is your life. Your life isn't some grand future destination, it's the quality of attention you bring to the task at hand. He'd constantly ask himself, is this thought necessary? Is this action necessary? It's a filter for what actually matters. Applying this starts with a radical commitment to single tasking. When you work, just work. Close the other tabs. Put your phone in another room. When you talk to someone, just listen. Don't just wait for your turn to speak. You can also use what we might call intention anchors. Before you start something, state your purpose. I am now going to write this report with focus. Before you walk into your house after work, pause and set an intention. I will be patient and loving with my family. These tiny moments of conscious choice are the building blocks of a disciplined life. Another trick is to have an ethical reminder. Pick a role model, Maybe Marcus himself, or just someone you admire. In a tough situation, ask yourself, what would they do right now? That question snaps you out of your reactive brain and forces you to think about a higher, more virtuous way to act. Pro-soc is demanding, but it's the very essence of self-discipline. It's the choice to live your life deliberately, not accidentally. Principle 6. Embrace voluntary discomfort. Principle number 6 is a direct physical challenge. In a world that is desperately trying to sell you comfort and convenience, the Stoics said you should intentionally choose hardship. This wasn't about punishing yourself. It was a workout for the soul, designed to make you tougher and more appreciative. The logic is brilliant. By deliberately exposing yourself to small discomforts, you harden yourself against the big, involuntary ones that life will absolutely throw at you. Seneca used to practice this by living for a week as if he were poor, eating basic food and wearing simple clothes. He'd then ask himself, is this the condition I feared? He discovered it was not only bearable, but that it had its own kind of peace. You're vaccinating yourself against the fear of loss. Marcus lived this on the harsh military frontier, but the principle works even in peacetime. He believed that a person who has only known comfort is weak. Real strength is forged in adversity. There are two massive benefits here. First, it expands your comfort zone and builds your willpower. When you willingly take a cold shower, you're teaching your mind to stay calm under stress. You're exercising your discomfort muscle. That discipline then bleeds into other areas of your life. It's easier to resist procrastinating when you've already done something hard that day. Second, it completely recalibrates your gratitude. After fasting for a day, the simplest meal tastes like a feast. After sleeping on the floor, your bed feels like heaven. Voluntary discomfort is the antidote to the hedonic treadmill, that cycle of always needing more to feel happy. By taking comforts away sometimes, you learn to appreciate what you already have. You can start this today. It's simple, but not easy. End your shower with 30 seconds of cold water. Skip a meal once in a while. Try a digital fast for a day. No phone, no social media. Sleep on the floor one night. Walk instead of driving. The goal isn't to be miserable. The goal is to prove to yourself that you are tougher than you think you are. You're reminding yourself that your happiness doesn't depend on external comforts. By practicing voluntary hardship, you're not making your life worse. You're making yourself stronger. Principle 7. Adopt the view from above. The seventh principle is a profound meditation practice, the view from above. Marcus returned to this again and again in his journal to shrink his anxieties and get some much-needed perspective. It's a visualization exercise. He'd imagine himself floating up, out of his body. He'd see himself, then zoom out to see all of Rome, then Italy, then the whole world. He'd keep going, seeing the earth as just a tiny speck in the silent black expanse of the cosmos. From that cosmic view, he would look down on all human affairs, the armies, the arguments, the births and deaths, and see them for what they were. Tiny, fleeting events in the sweep of eternity. He wrote, "On how tiny a clod of the whole earth do you crawl." This exercise is a powerful cure for an overblown ego. From that height, our most stressful problems, our biggest embarrassments, our greatest triumphs, they all shrink to their proper size. The promotion you didn't get, the argument you had, seen from the stars, they're less than a grain of dust. The point isn't to make you feel meaningless, but to give you a sense of calm and perspective. It frees you from the prison of your own petty worries. Astronauts often talk about a similar experience called the overview effect. Seeing the Earth from space, they say, changes them forever. They see our planet as this small, beautiful, fragile thing, and all the borders and conflicts that seem so important on the ground just vanish. Marcus figured out how to get that same perspective without ever leaving the ground. You can do this right now. Close your eyes. Imagine you're floating up from your chair. See the room, the building, your neighborhood. Keep rising, seeing your city, your country, the continents. See the earth hanging in the darkness, a silent, beautiful sphere. Now from up there, think about the problem that's stressing you out. See how small it is in the grand scheme. Think of the billions who lived before you with their own problems, and the billions who will come after, long after you and your problems are gone. This isn't about ignoring your feelings. It's about putting them in context. By regularly taking the view from above, you cultivate humility. You stop seeing yourself as the main character of the universe. This shift in perspective is a source of immense strength, allowing you to rise above the daily chaos and find peace. Principle 8. Practice amor fati, a love of fate. Now we get to Principle 8, and this might be the most challenging and transformative idea in all of Stoicism. Amor fati. It's a Latin phrase that means a love of fate. This goes way beyond just accepting what happens. Amor fati asks you to take it a step further, to love it, to embrace it, to see it as necessary and maybe even good. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who was a big fan of the Stoics, put it this way: "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, but love it." Marcus Aurelius was saying the same thing 2,000 years earlier. He urged himself to accept the things to which fate binds you and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. For the Stoics, everything that happens, even the awful stuff, is part of a larger cosmic order. To fight against it is to fight against reality itself. To love it is to align yourself with the universe. This is a radical idea. How can you love getting a terrible diagnosis or losing your job or being betrayed? The Stoics would say these events are opportunities. They are raw material for virtue. Obstacles are not in the way, they are the way. As Marcus famously wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." A fire takes whatever you throw on it and burns hotter. A virtuous person takes challenges and uses them as fuel to become more courageous, more patient, more resilient. Practicing amor fati means reframing your entire life story. Instead of good things and bad things, you see one single connected story where every moment was necessary to make you who you are right now. You wouldn't have your strengths without your struggles. To try this, look at your past. Think of a challenge that felt like a total disaster at the time, a breakup, a failure, a rejection. Now, can you trace a line from that bad event to something good in your life today? A new relationship, a different career, a new strength you discovered? In the present, when you face an obstacle, resist the urge to call it bad. Instead, try the Stoic response. Okay, this is the hand I've been dealt. How can I play it with skill? How can this make me better? You treat fate less like an enemy and more like a sparring partner. Amor fati is the ultimate self-discipline, the discipline to not just put up with your life, but to love it, all of it. Section 9. Principle 9. Focus on the essential. Principle 9 is a direct attack on the modern epidemic of overwhelm. It's the discipline of focusing only on what is essential. Marcus Aurelius, a man with near infinite responsibilities, knew the secret to being effective, and calm wasn't doing more. It was doing less, but doing it better. He wrote a sharp reminder in his journal. Because most of what we say and do is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? That question, is this necessary, is a sword for cutting through the clutter of modern life. We live in an age of non-essential nonsense. We're yanked in 1,000 directions by notifications that don't matter, meetings that should have been an email, and a constant pressure to have an opinion on everything. The result is a shattered attention span and a nagging feeling that we're always behind. We're busy, but not productive. The Stoic path requires a ruthless focus on what's essential, That means you have to decide what's truly important to you, your work, your family, your health, your character, and be willing to let go of the rest. It's minimalism for your time and attention. Marcus believed our inner peace is directly tied to how well we protect our minds from the non-essential. As he put it, we can live a good life if we learn to be indifferent to what makes no difference. Applying this is a two-step process. Identify and eliminate. First, you have to identify your essentials. What are your core values, your most important goals, the people who matter most? Write them down. That's your list. Everything else is on the chopping block. Second, conduct a ruthless audit of your time. Look at your calendar, your to-do list, your habits. For each item, ask Marcus's question. Is this necessary? Is this meeting actually necessary? Is this social event necessary for my well-being? Is scrolling through this feed necessary for me to be a better person? Be honest and be brave. Saying no is a modern Stoic superpower. Say no to the meeting without an agenda. Say no to the social event that drains you. Say no to the endless fire hose of news and outrage that just agitates your mind. By focusing on the essential, you don't do less. You do more of what actually counts. You create space for deep work, real relationships, and the quiet you need for a good life. It's about liberating your time and energy for what truly matters. Principle 10. Remember your mortality. Memento Mori. And now, the final principle. It's the most sobering, and because of that, the most powerful. Memento Mori. Remember you will die. In our culture, death is the topic we avoid at all costs. But for the Stoics, constantly remembering death wasn't morbid. It was a source of meaning, urgency, and discipline. Marcus thought about his own death all the time. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't meant to be depressing. It was a clarifying agent. If this was your last day on Earth, would you waste it on a petty argument? On mindless scrolling? Would you put off telling someone you love them? Of course not. The thought of death instantly separates the important from the trivial. He also used it to stay humble. He'd think of the greats, Alexander the Great, Caesar, and note that they're all gone, turned to dust. He wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now, take what's left and live it properly." It's a powerful call to stop procrastinating on being the person you want to be. There is no guarantee of tomorrow. The time to live with virtue is right now. Memento Mori is the ultimate motivator. It creates urgency. Why put off that difficult task? Why delay forgiving someone you might not have tomorrow? As Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time." The Stoics also used this to deal with their fear of death itself. They saw it as a natural process. It's not death that's scary, Marcus argued, but a life that was never truly lived. To apply this, you don't have to be morbid. Put a small object on your desk, a coin, a stone, whatever, as a physical reminder. When you look at it, let it prompt the question, am I using my time well? Am I living by my values right now? Memento Mori is the ultimate tool for self-discipline because it reminds you that your time is finite and therefore infinitely precious. It forces you to stop wasting it and to focus with fierce intensity on what really matters, your character and your actions here and now. Conclusion. So what does this all add up to? The teachings of Marcus Aurelius aren't just historical trivia. They are a timeless, practical guide to living a good life, especially when things get chaotic. These 10 principles, understanding control, building a morning fortress, premeditating challenges, journaling, living with attention, embracing discomfort, taking the view from above, loving your fate, focusing on the essential, and remembering your mortality, are not just ideas. They are active training exercises for your mind. Stoic self-discipline isn't about being hard on yourself for no reason. It's about liberation. It's freedom from the tyranny of your own knee-jerk emotions, freedom from distraction, and freedom from the fear of things you can't control. It's how you build an inner citadel, a fortress in your mind that can withstand any storm. This journey doesn't start with some grand gesture. It starts with the small choices you make every day. It starts tomorrow morning when you choose to get up and meet your purpose. It starts the next time you feel frustrated and you choose to pause and ask what's in your control. It starts tonight when you open a journal and hold yourself accountable. The work isn't easy, but as Marcus reminds us, it is the work of a human being. And it is the most rewarding work there is. If you're ready to keep going on this journey, subscribe to join our community. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of these 10 principles hit home for you the most? Thanks for watching.